and welcome to Uncut Threads. Today, we'll be asking whether a virtual community can preserve cultural knowledge in the same way an in-person guild does. Um, I don't think that the answer is yes or no. I think there are things that the in-person guild does well, and I think there are many things that the virtual guild does well. I'm Judie Pokakaa, and I was the president of the Modern Quilt Guild. I've been in lots of in-person guilds. I'm in several online virtual guilds, and I love both. Miriam will be my guest today. And of course, she started the Quilt Africa Tribe, and starting a virtual guild, I'm sure was probably a little bit scary, but I feel like it is going very, very well. Miriam, do you want to? I know everybody probably knows who you are, but for people who come across this video, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Miriam Galadima Benson, and I'm coming live from Abuja in Nigeria. That's in West Africa. And I'm the founder of Quilt Africa Fabrics. Um, and I am happy to be here today. I think the topic today is really important, not just as regards Quilt Africa Tribe, but generally speaking. So I'm really excited to have Judie take us through this. Thank you so much, Judie, for having me today.
Thank you for being here. I think that it's important for us to, really talk about this because some people think that, oh, I can only be in a certain kind of guild when you can actually be in many different guilds and preserve culture and history in many different ways. Um, what does preserving culture actually mean? And I think that being in different cultures. So I was married, my last name is Pokakaa, and I was married to a Hawaiian. And so looking at how they preserve culture versus how African Americans preserve culture versus how, different races preserve culture, it's been um difficult for me to have a happy medium. So, preserving culture can be number one when it comes to Quilt Africa Tribe. I really, really love that, we get the names of different fabrics. Um, I, love learning about like with our block of the month when it comes to um the different silhouettes that we're using. So having this be virtual, I really feel like we are preserving culture. I
Yeah.
feel like we are really, really learning. For me, there's a lot of things that I never knew. Like I guess in my mind, I wouldn't have said, what about the camel in Africa? You know what I mean? That's not the first thing that comes to my mind. So it was wonderful to have you to give us some background on the different things because there's just stuff that comes up and I'm like, hmm, learning last month about the dashiki and the fact that, where it comes from and what looks different in America and how it's pronounced differently and why, that was just something that I was like, oh, I love that information. So preserving culture, what does that mean to you?
Um, so, you know, for me, preserving culture is it's really important. First of all, I have to say that because as the world becomes more of a digital village or a global village, they call it, and things become more knowledge and information and the way of life becomes more uniform, we're losing a lot of the things that make us individuals, in as relates to culture and tradition and identity and roots. Everything is becoming diffused. Things are becoming watered down. Things are getting forgotten. Now, I'll use myself as a case in point on a more personal level. I'm from the northern part of Nigeria, and the northern part of Nigeria, contrary to popular information that you hear on the news or even in some educational resources, it is made up of multiple minority tribes. And what does that mean? That means that sometimes within 20 kilometers, you find a group of people that don't speak the same language.
Mm.
So popular information will tell you that the northern part of Nigeria is all Hausa, but that's not true. So I'm from one of those minority tribes where we are a collection of villages and now like maybe 3 local governments that speak variations of the same language. There are so many dialectical differences. What that means is that because of the going into Nigerian history now, because of the Islamic invasion that started from the northern part of Africa and came into the northern part of Nigeria, Hausa became kind of like lingua franca of the north. And what that means is that our languages are beginning to die out. For instance, I'm not even fluent in my language, but I'm somewhat fluent in Hausa. So that means that there are certain groups of people in my village right now, we will have problems communicating. The older group of people who don't speak Hausa, who speak pure Tangale, which is my language, we will have some problems communicating because there are certain words, certain cultural descriptions they might want to make to me that I will not grasp because my understanding of the language is not strong. And when you come down to my children, because I'm married out of my culture, you find that they now know just a smattering of words of Tangale. So I can see firsthand how culture is eroding and how culture is diffusing and how culture is becoming historical.
Yeah.
And so that has kind of informed a lot of the things that I do, that I try to share when it comes to Quilt Africa fabrics. So that's what culture means to me. That, and I'm trying to say the body of knowledge, the way of life, the traditions of a people, the language, and the importance that certain things, have is being lost. To me, that's culture, but it's now being lost.
Yes, I can tell you that, I'm from South Carolina, and on the coast of South Carolina, we have the Gullah people, and the Gullah people, they speak English, but the older people, you don't understand what they're saying. And I visited the island, and, you kind of look at the younger people to say, what are the older people saying? And I was, I married a Hawaiian, and the queen, she said, I do not want our language to die out. When Americans came there and kind of took over the island, that was her thing. I don't want our language to die out. And now it doesn't matter. Every kid from kindergarten up, if you go to school there, you have to take the Hawaiian language. And I think that that's something that's very important. That was something, as a queen that was no longer the queen, she went through and says, hey, we have to preserve our history. And she started a fund, and there's a school where you have to be Hawaiian to go to the school. And, so they really, really pass on their heritage. They do their quilting is by hand. They do the applique. And so when someone got married, And this was, I was invited in and I had to put a couple of stitches into the quilt. The whole family, that's what they do. The women get together, they're making this quilt, and everybody, every woman in the family has to put a stitch into it. And I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. And, so I think that as I'm 54, and as the older generation, we really need to impact and teach things. And I'm trying to learn things to kind of say to my grandkid, I have one right now, and I hope to have more. But hey, when I was a kid, I grew up we farmed, and this is how you grow things. So there are cultural things that I really, really, number one, join Quilt Africa to learn more about Africa.
Mm.
I did find out that, my ancestors are from um, that area, and
Mm-hmm.
I look at and say, okay, well, I need to know more. My thing is to visit. My thing is to find out more about my ancestors and what they would have done, years ago, things that I don't know. So joining a virtual tribe, a virtual guild, that is what I think that a in-person guild does not give. The fact
Mm.
that you're in Africa, I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I can learn so much from you. The other thing is, I've never met you in person, but I consider you just a great friend. So even though I can touch the person sitting next to me at my Quilt Guild meeting, I still feel like this is wonderful. This is just the fact that we had summit last week,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't that, we had to bring a teacher in and we had to figure out where they're going to stay and that kind of thing. So it's just been wonderful to be able to learn from so many different people, to know that, I'm actually sitting here conversing, being a friend of, and
Yes.
knowing someone in Africa and learning stuff,
Absolutely.
because everything that's written isn't true.
True.
And because I will tell you, I went to Hawaii. I was stationed there,
Mhm.
and my stepdaughter's school had a what they call a song contest, and then they did this play afterwards. And I'm sitting there looking at this play, and this play was about how Hawaii became a state. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. That's not what I learned in school. It was like
Mm-hmm.
Hawaii wanted to become a state, and I'm like, is this true? I had to,
What
now
exactly is true?
so it's like that is not what I was taught in school. So now I'm researching. And so
Yeah.
this is what I love, is that when you have this virtual type of community, I
Mm-hmm.
can learn from you, and then I can go and research and find what is really, really true. And
Yes.
so that helps really preserve
Mm.
culture. It
Yeah.
helps me to learn more. It helps me because, if I had not been stationed in Hawaii, I'd have never known that the Queen was imprisoned, and that the
Yeah.
United States just took
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never would have known that, you
Yeah.
know. And what else is this, knowing you, I went back and says, okay, wait, I did have my genealogy done, and
Mhm.
you were talking about the what's the
Opposite.
yeah.
The
So when
opposite.
we were talking about that, I
The schools,
didn't
there
see
are
the
so many,
word.
so much. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, now I'm going to go back and look. Now I'm going to, and I started to really, really look into the fabrics. Not only that, look into the people,
Yeah.
which is part of my ancestry. It's like, you know, so
Yeah.
I feel like having a virtual community really, really helps to preserve culture, because it helps people like me in the United States
Mm-hmm.
learn more
Yeah.
from people like you who are in Africa, who can say, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
This is what's from Africa. This is
Yeah.
what, is from Nigeria. And to help me understand more about the fabrics, about the culture, about
Mm-hmm.
things that are done so much. so much more differently than the United States. I do feel like the in-person guilds, there are a lot of things that they do well. The biggest thing that I think they do well is most in-person guilds now have a virtual, you can go on Zoom and watch the meetings. And having that, I feel like that helps, like, because there's plenty of times when, guess what, I don't feel like going nowhere. And I still want to be part of the community.
Yes.
So number one, I want to thank you for starting the Quilt Africa Tribe. That's number one, because I have learned so much, and I love getting to know you and getting to know more about African culture. Um, what are things that you feel the virtual community could do better?
The virtual community is so I just want to point this out, that the cultural aspect of Quilt Africa was birthed from just seeing the gap. So I wouldn't say that, in a sense, a digital community can be a cultural and a cultural preserve and for heritage as well. But I think it has to be, for Quilt Africa, is more intentional. It's more intentional because of the gaps that I noticed. It could very well have just been like any other business, just coming and talking about quilting, and that's the end of it. But it became really intentional for me because I saw the gap, and also because I have the love of sharing the culture. So I think that is what makes it a little distinctive. Now, to answer your question, a digital community can do in itself, becomes a preserver of culture. Because unlike the culture we had before and the way of transmitting communication, a digital community by itself becomes an archive. Quilt Africa now, even outside of the fact that we talk about culture, we have such a large archive that people can go back to the first time, I started appearing on video and saying, oh, so this is what you've been doing, and this is the metamorphosis, the evolution, of how it's been up until now. So in itself, that is culture, the culture of Quilt Africa, if you like. So actually talking about culture, African culture is specific to Quilt Africa, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. And it's intentional. It's absolutely intentional, because fortunately for me, time and chance happened. I have the interest and I saw the gap and I'm able to fill it. So I think this topic actually talks about two separate things. Digital communities as culture preservers, because they will preserve the culture of what was happening at the time they were live, at the time they were on. They will preserve that culture. But Quilt Africa does both. It preserves the culture of the time, and it also communicates African culture, to the members. So maybe every digital community can decide to spotlight something around you, not necessarily the way Quilt Africa does, because we are unique to ourselves, African culture and tradition. But maybe digital communities can begin to think about, what can we do that alongside the mainstream thing we're doing, we can also begin to shed light on certain things. Because like you said, a digital community is really strong. It's really powerful, because you reach the reached and the unreached. You reach the people who don't even want to be reached, or who can't be reached, because the convenience of it is amazing. Yes. The convenience of it is amazing, So once you break down certain barriers and certain fears, it really becomes a powerful tool because it can reach anyone, anytime, whether now or in the future, as long as they
Mhm.
have access to the resources. And so I think
Right.
that's where the digital community is really powerful, and it's has an advantage over the in-person. The in-person, once the moment passes, then it becomes memory that cannot be cross-checked, that cannot be, you can't go back to look at anything about it. So my one thing would be maybe digital communities need to pick an aspect of something that relates to what they're doing, and begin to shed more light on it. And that would be a fantastic way of preserving not just the culture of that community, but also whatever it is that they decide, to spotlight.
I will tell you, you have where um a person can go back and look at all of the summits. And that is something that I think really, really preserves um culture and history, because being able to go back and say, okay, this was the first one, and see the difference of the first one to what's now. I just think that's wonderful. The other thing is not just seeing this was the first one, but being able to say, hey, you know what? I can go back and I can do something else. So like if I started with number one and I made a quilt from number one, well, now my skill is better. And with my
Hmm.
skill being better, I can go back and make that quilt again if I wanted
In a
to,
different way,
you know.
exactly. And it turn out to be different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, with different colors and
Yes.
things like that. So I love that, you can go back, and even though you might not have been live with one of your workshops, well, I
Mm-hmm.
can go back and like I see everybody's on Facebook, or I see, just the pictures are showing up in the archives, and I'm like, "Ooh, I want to do that." Well, when you've had it in person, guess what? You can't go back
Yeah.
and say, let me do the pause
Yes.
of exhaustion, or, you
Yes.
can't do that. So I think that that is a big thing for virtual communities, is that guess what? I can go back. I can
Mm-hmm.
still do that. It might have happened 2 years ago, but I love that. And I want to do it now because
Yeah.
my skill is better. I might not have, as a quilter, I do look at things and be like, I can't do that yet.
Uh,
But I love the
work
fact
up
that
to
I
it.
can go back and say,
Yeah.
yes, I'm going to do this
Yeah.
small one. I'm going to keep going, and then I can go back. So that is something that I really feel like virtual communities really, really preserve, is because you can go back and say, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try
Yeah.
that. I didn't get to see, or I might not have been available for Summit. However, I can go back and watch Summit. I can still do
Absolutely.
it. So that is something I really like. I do want to talk about participation. So we have the tribe members. How do you think we could get our quieter members to participate? Because I think that participation is just it's what we need to keep the tribe going. And,
Hmm.
if we don't get new members to participate, sometimes things will die out and not go.
Yeah.
So what do you think are some ways to get new members to participate?
Hmm. So because I have the privilege of an overview,
Mhm.
I can say that we kind of have three categories of members in the tribe. Those who are not afraid to step forward, and take charge of certain things, or, really put themselves out there, and they're all welcome. And then there are those who are quiet behind the scenes. They don't mind watching the recordings. They make their progress. They're absorbing. They're just not visible.
Mhm.
Every once in a while they send me emails to say, hey, this is what is happening. Um, this is how maybe this summit or this workshop, this is how it impacted me, and stuff like that. Or I'm not happy about this thing that you did, So I have the privilege of seeing them behind the scenes. And then there are
Mhm.
those who maybe they're just passing through. I don't know. They're like they're there, but they are not there, you know. So I think that is that 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 category is the category that we are looking to see how they can get involved. And sometimes I understand,
Mhm.
we've had members who would be on for a long time, but maybe due to the stage of life they're in, circumstances and stuff like that, they are quiet for some time. But when
Mhm.
things are stable, things are better, they come up and they begin to shine and they begin to be visible, you know. Um, but I think there's also a tiny group that is totally missing out on all the advantages, of our virtual community. They are they are like one leg in, one leg out. Maybe a friend told them, "Oh, there's something happening here," and they're here, but they're not engaging, not in the free um talks that we have like this, not in the free challenges, not in the paid ones, nothing there, they're there, but they are not there. So I think for me, those are the category of people that I would really love to reach out to see, is it something that is missing? You know,
Mhm.
is it something that you're not understanding or something that is not appealing? So those are the category of people that I would really love to find out what exactly is happening. There's also another category who, like I said, are quietly absorbing, but they are making moves with what they get from our tribe
Mhm.
elsewhere. And I'm
Mm.
really happy to have every category of persons because I think one of my giftings is just to be a teacher at heart. You
Mhm.
just love when whatever you put out is received and it's used, and you can see that
Mhm.
it's making impact. And even those categories, sometimes they reach out to me. Like a few days ago, I received an email from Miss Jeanette Floyd. She participated in a few of our workshops and she was able to build her body of work. And she's now exhibiting, I think, in Florida. So she sent me
Mhm.
just like 3 lines. Thank you for everything that you're doing with Quilt Africa. I wanted to let you know that I'm exhibiting, and I just wanted a shout out to you and other groups, and people that
Mhm.
have helped me get to where I am. And that made me feel so good, you know. And I added a link and I clicked on it and I saw that she had like a really interesting body of work. She did the mother and child in various expressions, different ways of the same thing. And it was so amazing. So just to round up this question, I would just want to say if you are in the tribe and you are somewhat quiet, let us know what we are not doing. If it's us, I understand life can just make you sit on the sidelines, even if you don't want to. But if it's anything that we're doing or we're not doing, would like for you to tell us, so that you can be more involved, so that you can take advantage of this community that we have built. And honestly, the growth of the community is amazing. It's not just quilting, there are friendships, there are support systems, that is being built within our tribe. And it's something that I would want everyone to enjoy, So I hope that that answers that.
Yes, and that's something when it comes to the quieter members, you know, I, I want them to feel welcome and not be afraid of showing their work and things like that. I am one that I jump in and I'm there to help and I want people, I don't show my work as much as I probably should.
Mhm, mhm,
I'm one of those people that I should put my work out there and show it more. And I'm, like to be very encouraging to people. But then I realized, and that's something I had to think about. It's like, hey, I'm very encouraging. And I'm telling people, put your work out there. And then I was like, how much have I put my work out? And a
mhm.
lot of it for me is that I'm busy and I forget.
Yeah.
I'll finish up a project and I'll have it and I'll put it to the side and I'll run and do the next thing. So I think we do need to, for those of us who are quieter when it comes to showing our work, when it comes to certain things, I think that we need to, kind of maybe have a day that we pick a piece and put it out there and say, hey, this is what I did. Look at this with this African fabric. Look at how, because that's, I think my biggest thing is that's what I want to show off. I want to show off the beautiful fabrics. I want to show off the beautiful prints. And I think I do that locally. I do
Yes.
that with my family, and I have a lot of people who say, "Oh, I love that." But I don't think I show as much in the tribe as I should. That's number one. And and I'm just saying it for me
Mhm.
personally that I
Mhm.
need to show my work a little bit
Yeah.
more. Um, and I'm thinking about participation because if I show my work, even though I'm kind of shy about it sometimes, I think that
Mhm.
might help someone else.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you're quiet in the tribe or, sh show us some stuff. Just
Yes.
it- I'm just simply saying that because you know what, it makes other people say, you know what, I did that. I'm
Yeah.
going to show that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love this fabric. And I think
Yes.
that that's another thing for me. I really love this fabric. I made a button bag and I use some African fabric for the scraps and I have it. It's very pretty. And you know what? I showed it to my local guild and they loved it. And I was like, did I ever I've never posted that bag. So, so that's why I really wanted to talk about participation because I need to participate more. That's number one. And number two, I just want people to feel comfortable. It's a virtual community. However, that's what makes it fun. You know, I've even shown a quilt and I was like, there's a mistake in this quilt. And this was at a local guild. There's a mistake in this quilt. And I'm telling everybody, and nobody, everybody's like, hmm, if you hadn't have said that, I wouldn't have known that there was a mistake. Now I'm looking for the mistake. You know what I'm saying? So I want people to understand. I want the tribe members to understand that everybody makes a mistake. And with modern quilting, I love the fact that they say it's a design element, it's not a mistake. So I really want to talk about it so we can encourage participation. We can encourage more
Yeah.
people to show their
What,
work.
to be honest, one of the things that I want to like acknowledge is that being part of a virtual community takes some commitment.
Mhm.
Well, it does even in person. Like for me, I think I may struggle in an in-person guild because like set times, if that's if I hadn't founded the Nigerian Quilt Guild, just like because I don't really like going out, to be honest. I really don't like going out much. Most times you find I'm a homebody,
Mhm.
and so breaking out that barrier of me having to actually get myself out all the time, like once a week or twice a week or once a month, you know, just breaking that off makes me participate more. But on the flip side, you also have someone have to photograph themselves, their work. Sometimes that's a barrier. If you're not just the selfie person kind of, it's going to be hard for you're not attached to your phone. You have to make time. You have to be intentional. And the unfortunate thing sometimes about pictures, and it does happen to me, is oh, my background is not good. Oh, I need to fix the light. And then you get caught up in so much.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you're like, oh, maybe I'm just not setting it right. So let me forget about it. But I love the people who share because they just go ahead and share.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's moments, sometimes others say, oh, I just asked someone to help me. So that's another way of breaking down some of those barriers. Sometimes you're like, oh, where I am is messy, where I am is noisy, the kids are streaking past, people are so there are actually challenges to a virtual community that you might not find in an in-person. And the biggest one is showing work. If
Mhm.
you attend an in-person guild, automatically everybody will see your work
Mhm.
without any extra steps. But in a virtual community, you have to put yourself out there. to see, to allow people to see your progress, to allow people to even tell you, sometimes people say, oh, I struggle with this, but you haven't put it out in the group, or in either in the project group or in the Facebook group for anyone to make a comment. But if you are in an in-person guild and maybe that month, that's what everybody is working on, and you take it, people will see, and they'll, you can easily ask and all of that. So yeah, there are barriers too. And I understand, because all of us are of a certain age. I think I can say that now that I'm 50, So tech is not something that comes naturally. We kind of just caught the tail end of the
Yeah.
boom, the tech boom, just the tail end, and we're all struggling. So sometimes that also matters. Like if you start, I struggle a lot, even with the videos, the light, it doesn't come naturally to me. So it's an extra effort for me to talk
Yeah.
about the sound, to talk about the light, even when I do videos like this. So I can imagine, and that's for me that I have to. So I can imagine for others that it's not really within the purview of your everyday life. It becomes like an added burden. So I just want to tell you that we don't really mind what the light is.
Yeah.
We don't really mind about your background. If I turn my camera now for you to see what is happening on
Oh,
this dining table, you're going to all freak out.
oh,
So there
yes.
are all constraints that we all work with, but we really want to see your work, even if you can't get anyone to help. It doesn't matter if the photo is grainy and someone else maybe has a fantastic. It doesn't matter. We just want to see what it is that you're doing. So I just wanted to put that out there, because honestly, I struggle as well.
Yeah.
I'm working on something and then I'm like, the lights. Oh my God, there's a piece of something at the edge, and then at the end of the day, I don't post. I'm guilty of it as well, but I'm really working to get out of that. So I encourage everyone who is like me to also just take that extra step or two,
Mm.
and just show us um what you do, what's under your needle, and some of the projects that you have that you're really proud of.
Yeah. I will say, I know my son gets sick of me because he'd be like, Mama, I just showed you that. I know, you guys show me again. And I'd say to him, Boy, I taught you how to use a spoon. Get in here and show me how to do this. You
Oh, I don't
know,
even want. I just call my daughter and say, just do this. I don't even, just go and figure, just do it. I don't even want to know. Don't even teach me. I'm beyond being taught some things. Just go and do it for me. So it
yeah,
helps having someone, that you can. But if you're alone, like I often am when they're in school, they're not around, I just do what I can, you
yeah.
know, I just do what I can, and I just put it out there, you
Yeah,
know.
my mom will be 76 in August. And I gave her an iPhone. And it's not the newest. It's like an iPhone 14. And it's I told her, I said, Mom, you know what, you can talk to me and I can see you when we're talking. And she's like, What? And so one time she accidentally called me that way and she has the phone in her ear. And I said, Mom, take the phone away from your ear. So I know that for her it's really, really hard when it comes to anything technical. And I'm always like, Mom, we can do this. I'm going to walk you through it. And then a lot of times I send, like my nephew, I'll be like, go over and help my mama use that phone.
Mhm.
Sure how to do it and help her. So I am not, I always tell people, don't be above asking the neighbor kid to help you out sometimes.
Yes,
And they'll do it.
yes.
I have my neighbor kids, they're little and they'll say, "Oh, what are you doing?" And because I will throw my quilt across my brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they'll be like, "What are you doing?" I'm taking a picture. Do you want help? Do you want me to do this? And yeah, sure,
Mm-hmm.
come on in, and they'll help. So,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, it,
yeah.
and I'm with you. It doesn't matter what the background looks like, because my background is blurred right now for a reason. Because I have little pieces that I'm working on a project and I have them everywhere. And, I
Yeah.
have this draped over here and this draped. And I'd be like, okay, I got to figure this out. Where am I going to take a picture of this? And a lot of times I clear a space on my floor, lay my quilt out, and my son is tall. So I'll tell him, come and go up real high and take a picture.
Yes, yeah,
So,
yeah.
but yeah. And I will tell you one thing that I love about online galleries or online anything, when it comes to communities, is people will show how they did something sometimes. We'll get a
Yes,
couple of
yes.
little pictures that say, okay, this is how I started and this is how I ended. So I love that kind of stuff. So, take pictures and say, this is my pile of fabrics that I'm using, and then this is what I made out of that pile. I think that that is something that is, people like me, and I'm still considered a new quilter. I've only been quilting for 5 years. I
Hmm.
want to see your pile of fabric that you start with and see how beautiful it turns. It turns into this. So I just, when it comes to participation, participate in any way you can, you know. Um, give us comments. I love to read comments. I read
It
them all.
actually increases. That's one thing they taught us when we were in school. Like when you would be struggling with math and physics and chemistry, they would tell you, put yourself out there, join a study group, and don't be shy about teaching, saying, okay, I'm going to teach this,
Mhm.
because just that participation just increases you and gives you clarity and helps you in some way, you know. So that's one thing that I've discovered, that even when it comes to quilting, participation helps. And I dropped a link in the YouTube chat now. It's, you probably don't know, but we are building a tribe gallery. That has been one of the things that I'm really passionate about, building a tribe gallery. And that's why I said earlier that we are not just preservers of traditional African information. We also want to preserve your work and showcase your work. And so for everyone that drops a photo, we update it periodically, or for everyone who drops a photo, if you remember in the Facebook group, especially, we have if you share your photo, we will take it as consent, to use your pictures. And one of the things I'm really passionate about is building a gallery, you know. And so the link is in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube now, just click on the link. You will see the tribe gallery. And so every once in a while, we just gather photos, project photos, and we put them in there. It's not very sophisticated yet. We're getting there, but we are really working on it to make sure that everyone is credited properly. Right now, there's no accreditation. We just say from the tribe. But as we get more hands, it's something that we're going to build and make sure that, your work is showcased, I'm really passionate about saying we also want to have an in-person kind of exhibition. But the best kind of archive, honestly, is digital. If you can watch movies from the 20s, Charlie Chaplin, the silent movies, and you can watch, in the 1940s, all those movies, it's because it's digital. That's why it was preserved. Stage plays from that era, they had to be amazing for people to actually remember them, right? So that's an advantage that we have, that I don't want us to take it for granted. Share your work, help us to um like just broadcasted. I love put people on the spot. I love to be put on the spotlight. So I know that you put in the work, you put in the effort, and it's your creative genius. So we want to spotlight that. That's one reason why it's good to participate in the tribe. So I wanted to ask,
Mhm.
how can one of the challenges I have is maybe a neater way, an easier way, if you like, of having our members also contribute their own family stories and their textile knowledge or their creative work. Right now what we have is, most times if you share it to me by email, it's even difficult for me to do anything about it. But if it's in the Facebook group, I can assign anyone to kind of take it up and do the right thing, So right now we have only the Facebook group. Share it into the Facebook group or share it into any of the project groups like the summit groups or the Cause of Exhaustion group or the MLK group or, any of the projects that we've done or workshops, you share it there, it's likely going to be taken and, put into that gallery. But I'm thinking, is there an easier way? Do you think, and I'm talking to everyone watching now, if you can drop that in the chat, do you think there's an easier way where you would want to share information? Sometimes you do the most amazing legacy quilts, and their stories. And we don't know about them until we say, oh, come and share with us maybe at the summit as an unsung quilter or stuff like that. We don't know about it. Would you like us to know about your projects during, after, and then what's the easiest way, that you would feel comfortable sharing information with us? Maybe your textile knowledge. I know quite a number of tribe members have actually been to Nigeria and handled fabrics, not just in Nigeria, but across Africa. You have that knowledge. Would you want to share that? And what's the easiest way for you? If for instance, say we put out a Google form, would you feel comfortable saying, okay, clicking on it and sharing all of that information and submitting, so that we can find ways to ensure that your works, your knowledge, the spotlight is also on you. We're open to, ideas. We're open to. So please drop that in the comments. If you have any ideas at all that you'd want to share, please drop that in the comment. Sorry, Judie, I just wanted to
put
that in there.
So I will tell you one thing that I've been thinking about is spotlighting someone. We have with the Fiber Arts Council, people will nominate someone and we do a spotlight of that person on our website. Right now we do it every other month and they stay up for 2 months. And I'm not saying to put this all on you. I would definitely help if you wanted to do something like that. Whereas the person fills out the form and we just kind of do a little spinny thing with all the names that we have and pick one and spotlight and show their work. So that would be something I would be willing to help with because
Yeah.
I help with that right now. So, we could do
like a hot seat.
Yeah.
I would love something like a hot seat to say we picked you and sit down. Let's talk about your project. Let's, share with us the beginning, the process, and the final result. I think that would just be amazing. I would really love to do that. And I'm so glad that you offered to help because the ideas are plenty, but the energy and
Yes,
the
yes. And I mean, for me, it's because I'm already um doing that with the group. So I kind of can help lead it because we have a list of questions and everything. And I think it would be great because we'd be able to infuse our own family history
yes,
into, our African fabrics and things like that. I'm
yeah.
working on a legacy quilt myself right now, and it is the women who made me. We found a picture, and I have everything. I definitely am going to use African fabrics in my legacy quilt, and to find a picture. So it's my grandmother as a child, her mother, and my grandmother's grandmother. And so that's something that I'm working on, and I have my design and I'm picking fabrics right now. And so I think that injecting my family using African fabrics, it really is, I'm having fun. I'm
Yeah.
loving it, you
Yeah.
know, and it's one of those things that I think that it would help everybody to kind of say, "Ooh, this is my grandmother, this is my great grandmother," to see pictures or whatever your legacy quilt is. And this quilt, unfortunately, I
Yes,
have to
sorry
make
to reach
two
Yeah.
because my both my daughter and my son's like, "Well, I'm going to take that quilt."
You
Yeah,
will get when you're done.
yeah. So now I'm making two.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I might have to make three because of my sister, because she's always like, hey, 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 where, I want
What about me?
yeah, you know. So I just really feel like that being a part of this tribe has helped me to actually develop this legacy quilt.
Yeah.
There are colors, there are fabrics that I'm like, ooh, yes, this fabric is going in. So I have I use I'll show you. I use these for all
Mm-hmm.
my projects. So I have one that, all right, ooh, yes, I got this fabric from Quilt
Mm-hmm.
Africa Fabrics, and this one is definitely going in my quilt. This one is
Yeah.
definitely, so right now that's what I'm doing. But I think that this is a wonderful idea because it will help
It's
everybody who wants to say, okay, I'm gonna do African fabrics. I want to put my own culture, my own family into this. And it's something
yes.
that we can pass on. So I think it's great. I'm glad you interrupted and added that
Yeah.
in.
And
So,
I want to say that part of what makes our tribe, for me, part of what makes it alive is the is the personal aspects of it. I
yeah.
love the best part of show and tell is just listening to where it came from
Hmm.
and how you got it done and how you feel about it, you know. And I always try to lead with that in this, even with the stories I tell, I try to tell you from my perspective. And like I said, it's a function, the way the tribe is a function of just time and chance. It just so happened that I had a dad who encouraged us to go into our culture. He respected tradition. He was forward thinking, but he respected tradition. He respected where we were from, and he opened us up to an appreciation of culture, which is something that quite a number of people around me don't have. And so I
Hmm.
try to lead with that to say, look, when I was a girl, or this is a story that my grandmother told me, and I can share that. So for me, one of the reasons why our tribe is so powerful is because our individual stories come together and they make a powerful whole. And I don't, like I said, I don't want anyone to miss out on that. And one of the biggest successes of the Quilt Africa Tribe is the Summit on Song Quilters,
Hmm.
which was Jerry's idea, just to have quilters who may not desire a world stage or, a quilting stage or whatever, but you get to hear what they're doing. And the requirement, I think, for us is like minimum of 12 quilts, 15 quilts. If you have that, you get featured on unsung quilters. But what if you don't? What if you don't have up to 12 or you don't have up to 15 or you just don't feel comfortable? You know,
Hmm.
the first thing is share photos, tell us a little bit about yourself. That's the best thing about the written post, the
Yes.
written share. That's my favorite. I do not even like coming on video. If you don't know, I actually don't like it. I just do it because I have a strong reason to,
Hmm.
you know. But for me, just writing, and sharing is so powerful. You pour your heart out without eyes on you.
Hmm.
That's one. Another thing you can do is a hot seat that we're planning to start. You can have maybe just one great quilt.
Hmm.
That's your one thing, and we're happy to take that and then have you talk about it and rejoice in it and showcase it, and
Hmm.
just be proud of it and allow us to also be proud of it with you. Another thing that is on my heart while we are on the topic and in the last like 7 minutes, I can't believe time has gone, is how do we involve younger generation into what we're doing in Quilt Africa? you know Sometimes it's hard because if the younger generation are like me, my mom tried so hard to teach me the sewing aspect after I learned the fabric aspect.
Hmm.
She used to drag me to the market, so that one, it wasn't like I really had a choice. I learned it. I started by force until I fell in love with it. So I learned that, which my other siblings actually don't have, because that was my experience with her.
Hmm.
Now, she now tried to teach me and my sister how to sew, but it was not sticking. I was not sitting in one place. So I know that there's a challenge of that. Now I'm trying to get my daughters to learn, and there's that same resistance. Like, because it seems like it's a long, boring thing when there's TV to watch. you
Yeah.
know, or friends to talk to. So they're not into it, it's like a struggle. They can, but they don't want to, you know. So one of
Yeah.
the things that I also have in my mind is how do we get the younger generation to be interested, you know, to learn. And the interesting thing is that after I had my daughter, I now said, oh, why didn't I learn how to sew when my mom was teaching me? Now I just want to sew. And so I had now had to go to a sewing school, which was why I now learned garment making, you
Mhm.
know, and which eventually led me into quilting, you know. But how as a tribe, how are we going to commit to say we are going to teach the younger ones? We're going to draw them in. One thing that I've noticed is our membership is getting younger.
Mhm.
When we started with Quilt Africa, it was like 65 plus, 60, 65. But now I notice it's getting younger. We're getting 40s, members in their 40s, you know, in their 50s, you know. And so I think there's a kind of a shift, and there's kind of like younger person's interest. So how do we get people interested in that? Because if we're talking about cultural knowledge and heritage and preserving and passing down, we certainly need the younger generation to have some level of interest, some level of touch point. My touch point was I learned the fabric. The natural thing was, what do I now do with the fabrics? So
Mhm.
even though at that point, what to do with it wasn't immediately attractive to me, but just having that touch point of learning about the fabrics made it easier to transition into what to do about the fabrics. For my daughters now, I'm teaching them about color. I'm teaching them about, you know, complementary, you know, and all of that, trying to develop the same instincts that
Mhm.
my mom developed in me just by being around the fabric. So I'm trying to develop that in them now. You know, I can tell them, go and put together this person's order. And this is how it should be, because you want the person, when they receive their order, you want them to go, wow, these colors just work together. So
Yeah.
I do that. I say, okay, you go and fulfill this order, put it together, and then bring it and we talk about it. So I'm trying to see what's the touch points that I can use with them to have them get interested. You know, sometimes I give them some Quilt
Mhm.
Africa thing and say, okay, you go and think about it, you go and do that, you know, just to see how I can draw them in. And I think that is really important, because you just need that the younger people to be interested and to say, hey, this is what, you know,
Um,
um,
I will say, I know we're winding down here. My local guild, we taught some Girl Scouts to sew, and we started with small projects. And let me tell you, we started out with like a book cover, and then we did like a zipper bag, and we, moved up. When we helped them make quilts, which was, it took us a year before we started making quilts, and each one of them got to pick their fabrics. They got, we had, this is what we did, uh, a quilt that had stars in it. And so what we started to understand with the girls was when we let them pick their own fabric, when we say, okay, here's the pattern. Now pick your fabrics, what fabrics you want to use. And it took, we thought that they were just going to pick something and that was going to be it. If they took their time. And not only did they make their quilts, we ended up where we showed their quilts and the pride that they have with showing their quilts. And once they showed it first at our local guild's quilt show, they showed it at the state fair. And one of
mm,
them won a ribbon. And, that was something that they really
yeah,
was like, oh my goodness, I won. And, it was, I think that that's what we need to do is start with small projects and work
yes,
them up to larger projects. And they have them show their projects, have them
yeah,
say, this is what
yeah,
I made
yeah.
at the Modern Quilt Guilds, the international group. They had several, I'd say probably about 15 kids quilts there, and it was just amazing. Even they had like three boys that worked on a quilt together, and it was a beautiful quilt. So I think that we need to get them smaller projects and get them to showing their projects and having people say ooh and ah over them, and that's when they will be like, oh yay, yay, I'm in there. But anyway, so we're going to wind down here because we got like 1 minute, and I just want to say a digital platform alone cannot preserve culture. People preserve culture. The platform gives us another place to gather, document, teach, listen, and pass knowledge forward. So, Quilt Africa Tribe, like I said at the beginning, thank you so much for starting this, because this has really, really opened my eyes to my culture, to learning, to getting more knowledge of what goes on, not just in my small bubble. And I
Yes.
want to say that I am actually going to meet in August a tribe member named Dorothy. So me and Carol, Dorothy's coming here. We're going to get together and have lunch. And you
I'm
know what?
so
That's, you know what I mean? So that's it. She's coming from another state and we're going to get together and have lunch.
wow, that is so
So
amazing.
reach out
Oh,
to
yes.
members
Reach
and
out. I
say,
love
this is
when we're
where I
having
live.
meetings and someone says, I'm in Maryland, I'm in the Northbrook area. I don't know what I'm saying. What area are you?
Yeah.
And then you just have that conversation going. I think it really gets me excited. And I just love that. I'm so glad you brought that up. Reach out, and then with time, some opportunities and some ideas and some next levels just come by just doing, as we're going along. I'm sure that opportunities for a proper physical coming together is going to
Yeah.
come up. Before we close, I wanted to acknowledge this comment. She says she's loving the discussion. She loves to share her work on Facebook, but the idea of having a show and sharing scares her. So she prefers being in the background and not upfront. So you see, this is one of the members that we're talking about, and that is absolutely fine. But we're not saying everyone has to be on camera. If you are ready to take that step, there's so much space to accommodate you, and we would love to have you. But if sharing, you know, by a Facebook page or even an email to me is your way, then we encourage you to do that. And we would be happy to do the sharing for you on a larger scale. So thank you so much for that comment.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having this conversation with me. I am enjoying Uncut Threads, and thank you for starting this whole conversation, because
Yeah.
this is putting out a lot of information that I think we all want to hear. And there's sometimes I'll be like, oh, I've not thought about that, so thank you so much for having Uncut Threads.
Thank
And
you
I want to
so much.
say, everybody, have a great day, have a great week. And, if this might be the time, and I'm going to make sure this week that I share one of my projects, because I haven't in such a long time. So look for my project. It's coming. It's going to be before Saturday. I'm going to put one of my projects out there, and join me. If you haven't shared, share with
If you
us.
haven't shared, that's the challenge exactly. If you haven't shared at all in the group, go ahead this week, anytime
Oh,
soon. Please drop a share and say first time sharing, so we can celebrate you.
yes.
And I also want to say that if you have quilts that you would like to feature them at the summit, send me an email, miriam@quiltafricafabrics.com, and I would love, 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 love to have you on as an unsung quilter. As many people as possible next year. Remember, we're going to be 10 years in Quilt Africa. So we are looking to celebrate our members like a lot. So don't think, oh, maybe she has enough. No, I don't have enough. I
Right.
want you to write to me and let me know that you would love to feature in next year's summit, and we can get planning. So thank you so much, Judie, for having me for this
Thank
conversation.
you. Thank you for being here. Okay, everybody, have a nice day.
Right. Bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.